and she killed my baby. I don't care how painful it is for me to remember or accept that. I'm never going to forget it.
I'm not either.
It was at that precise moment that the sun had just sunk beyond the horizon, leaving the city of Port Charles bathed in a warm, golden light. A thorough cleaning of the bar was performed by Christina Corinthos Davis, as she was getting ready to close Charlie's pub for the evening. In her efforts to close down the establishment, she moved with lightning speed and pinpoint accuracy. Her mind was racing, as it always does, and it was full of ideas about her future, about her family, and the unending question of how she would make her way in the world. And it's not like the pub was packed with people. At the moment that Christina looked up, she was taken aback to discover her father, Sonny Corinthos, entering the house. As the door opened slightly, the bell began to ring. Upon entering the doorway, Sonny was under the impression that he was the owner of the location, and in a sense he was. He was dressed in the same dark suit that he wears almost all the time, and he was carrying himself with the same authoritative demeanor that he always carries with him. "Greetings, Dad," Christina remarked with a tone that was both cautious and affectionate. Even though Sonny's visits were always appreciated, they frequently arrived with a sense of unease in the air to accompany them. When Sonny addressed his sweetheart, he did so in a tone that was significantly lower than his typical one. A motion was made toward one of the stools by him. "Are you free to talk this afternoon?" After putting her rag down, Christina turned her head and made a questioning expression on her face. "You really aren't going to come over here to have a drink, are you?" With a smile, Sonny shook his head and laughed. "Tonight is not the time. I had hoped to make it your place. It is necessary for me to talk about something that I have." As soon as Christina's interest was sparked, she went atop a seat that he was facing and folded her arms over her chest. "You are free to blame me. It is not a problem. What precisely is taking place here?" An offer of marriage from the father. As Sonny leaned in closer, he placed his forearms on the bar and continued to lean in. "I have been thinking about you quite a bit recently, and I have been thinking about everything that you have been through, that you have been going through. I am aware that it has not been simple, and additionally, I am aware that I have not always been the kind of father that you have need." A slight frown appeared on Christina's face, but she did not interrupt the conversation in any way. Sonny's sporadic interludes of self-reflection never failed to captivate her attention. According to Sonny, not only are you intelligent and capable, but you also have a great deal of potential. On the other hand, I am aware that you have been attempting to determine the next measures that you will take. But for someone like you, he made a gesture around the bar, and I thought to myself, I wonder if this is enough. Christina, you are called to so much more than this. In the way that Christina bent her head, she was displaying a great deal of skepticism. What else is there? What do you mean when you say that? Sonny straightened his posture, and the expression on his face changed to one of seriousness. I would like to offer you a position in my organization, and I would like to do it as soon as possible. Not the coffee business, he quickly added, fully aware that her instant impulse would be to object to the talk. He knew all too well that she would feel the temptation to object. The sign that is honest and trustworthy. In order for me to expand and successfully run my lawful enterprises, I need your assistance. When Christina heard the words, she was so shocked that she blinked her eyes in response to them hanging in the air between them. Are you even serious? I am as serious as I have ever been. Sonny responded in response to the question. The response that Christina had to it. While this was going on, Christina uttered a low whistle and shook her head. Wow. Okay, that's fine. I was not anticipating that at all. Look, Sunny remarked in a strong and forceful whisper. I am not requesting that you engage in any activity that could potentially be hazardous. Within this context, the focus is on constructing something that is both genuine and something that can be preserved. You are more than capable. You are driven, and you are a member of the family. Put your trust in me. Christina made an effort to get a handle on the information that her father was providing to her. She had spent a considerable amount of time trying to find her position, not only inside the family, but also in the wider world. She had attempted to attend college, work a variety of professions, and even become active in Dawn of Day, all of which had unsuccessfully accomplished their goals. There was never anything that felt quite like it belonged. To put that into perspective, Sunny was not a typical individual. He was not only offering a job, but also the opportunity to be a part of something far larger. What? Who knows? She responded with a moderate amount of reluctance. I don't know, Dad. One thing is to own a bar, but this is a completely different experience. That appears to be a massive amount of responsibility. In agreement, Sunny stated, yes, it is. But if I didn't believe you were capable of handling it, I wouldn't be giving it to you in the first place. The pupils in Christina's eyes contracted somewhat. Nevertheless, what about the rest of us? Is that Carly? Do you mean Michael? How strongly do they agree with this statement? Sunny's face became more tense for a brief period of time, but then it relaxed again. Christina is of the opinion that this relates to neither of them. At this point, I am going to take everything to myself. In the event that this is what you desire, Kevin, I will continue to have faith in you, and I will provide you with the opportunity to demonstrate that everyone is incorrect. Located at a confluence. After letting out a breath, Christina ran her hand through her hair. Dad, there is not enough time to process all of this. Nevertheless, despite the fact that I am grateful for the demonstration of trust, I can't help but wonder, what is the catch? Sunny gave her the assurance that there was no catch. The fact of the matter is, however, that it will not be simple. The amount of time, effort, and education required is substantial. You are capable of doing it, in my opinion. I will be there to provide you with guidance at every stage of the process. And I will be there if you require my assistance, okay? Because if you say yes, I will be there, and I will be there. Christina stared down at her hands, despite the fact that her thoughts were racing. The idea was enticing in more ways than she would have wanted to admit, and she was tempted to accept it. She experienced a prolonged period of feeling that she was the black sheep of the Corinthos Davis family. She was manipulated by her siblings, and she was tormented by the sins that she had committed herself. She was able to demonstrate to herself and the rest of the world that she was capable of accomplishing remarkable things as a result of this opportunity, which allowed her to emerge out from behind the curtain. However, it was complicated as well. Nevertheless, what if she was unsuccessful? The answer that she ultimately gave to her father was, I don't know, Dad. Please give me some time to think about it, she said. If you had looked at Sunny's face, you would have seen that he was in possession of it. Take as much time as you feel you must. In the words of Christina, I have faith in you. At this very moment, I have. An interview with the individual that Sam communicates with. After the sun had set, Christina went to Sam's place to meet with her sister. She was there to discuss something. Christina greeted Sam with the word Mum as soon as he answered the door. It is my father's desire for me to work for him. In response to Christina's request to enter, Sam raised an eyebrow and made a gesture. How can you work for him? Christina, She swiftly described the offer while pacing around the living room as she carried on her conversation. The phrase, "it's not the mob stuff," was the one that she emphasized the most. And the companies that are being called into question are respectable ones. To put that into perspective, it is Sunny. It is possible that I am not prepared for something like this. While she listened, Sam shook her head in agreement and reflected. That is something that I find to be an extremely interesting possibility, Christina. That, in addition to that, seems like a significant amount of pressure. What exactly do you want, don't you? In response, Christina stated, "Exactly. I don't know," and she was absolutely right. In spite of the fact that I am frightened that I will wreck it, there is a part of me that believes it has the potential to be incredible. Sam stood up and put his hand on Christina's shoulder before continuing. The two of them smiled. "Chrissy, you are more courageous than you actually give yourself credit for being. As of October 2023, you also possess a heart that is generous and caring. Should you choose to forward with this plan, I believe you will not only surprise yourself, but also everyone else. The choice is up to you." When Christina arrived back at Charlie's the following day, Sunny was already there, waiting for her to arrive by that point. With a commanding tone, she began by saying, "I gave it some thought. And now I'm in, but you have to give me the freedom to do things the way I want to. In your presence, there will be no favoritism or shortcuts applied. To be successful, I need to be able to achieve it on my own terms." A grin appeared on Sunny's face, and his eyes began to sparkle with pride. "That's my lovely lady." As the two of them shook hands, Christina experienced a glimmer of optimism. Once in a very long time, she experienced the sensation of being in charge of her own identity for the very first time. When it came to the future, she had been prepared to confront any potential danger head-on. Moreover, now that Sunny was standing next to her, she was aware that she would not be able to make it through it by herself.
Once he became obsessed with baking, music kind of took a backseat.
Well, at least he found something he loves and that he's good at.
A warm and inviting atmosphere was created at Kelly's diner by the sound of the jukebox, which was a familiar sound. There was Elizabeth Weber, sitting in her usual booth, stirring a cup of coffee that was on the verge of boiling. At the same time, her recollections from her teenage years began to swirl around her. Visits to Kelly's always had a way of refreshing memories from the past, despite the fact that she had secretly not anticipated feeling such a strong sense of nostalgia. She was jolted out of her reverie by the ringing of the bell that was located over the door. When she looked up, she felt a flutter of excitement course through her chest. The blue eyes of Lucky Spencer swept across the cafe as she entered the place, and then they finally settled on her. It seemed as though no time had gone at all as he smiled softly, and his mouth broke into a slight smile. It was as if the entire world had come to a complete halt at that very instant. The tone of his voice was just as warm as she remembered hearing it when he murmured, "Lucky, is it possible for me to accompany you?" A smile appeared on Elizabeth's face, and she made a motion toward the seat that was exactly opposite her. "In no uncertain terms, you are absolutely spot on with this. I had planned on going down memory lane by myself, but I found that it's a lot more enjoyable to do it with a friend by my side." Lucky chuckled softly and gave a small shake of his head once he had slid into the booth. "What do you think is going to happen to you when you go to Kelly's? From my perspective, it appears that there has been no change in this location. Common Sense Media has listed it as one of the best 10 shows in recent years, along with Breaking Bad," and her gaze continued to linger at the counter that still had Ruby's photo on it. "Not even a little bit," she stated. with the exception of the individuals who are working behind the counter, of course. A trip down memory lane of sorts. It was only natural that the topic of discussion would eventually shift to the history that they had in common while they were drinking coffee. For some reason, I was wondering if you could recall the first time that we sat in this booth together. In addition, Elizabeth's eyes were filled with a sense of humor, and she attempted to address the inquiry. He let out a hearty laugh. Why was it that I could have forgotten? Because I had taken your order for fries, it was only reasonable that you would be angry with me. Whenever Elizabeth laughed, she put her head to the side and tilted her head. It seems to me that you were kind of like that. After that, however, you made a peace offering to me by offering me a half of a milkshake, and I was unable to control my wrath that I was feeling. As Lucky continued to smile and sneer at me during the entire conversation, he stated, I always knew how to charm my way into trouble. The two of them let their memories to pass through their brains, and their laughter eventually turned into a gentle calm. During those formative years, the cave served as a safe haven for them, a place where they shared their dreams and worries, and even shared stories about their breakups of previous relationships. Do you ever find yourself ceasing to think about the evenings spent in the boxcar? Elizabeth inquired in a low voice, her tone growing increasingly bittersweet as she did so. Lucky came clean and revealed that the answer was always. During that particular era, that boxcar served as our entire universe. We reasoned that we could get away from everything, including the unrest and the drama, and just live our lives. Elizabeth gave a small nod while maintaining an absent-minded glance. You gave me the impression that I was safe there, and I was safe in that location. I have always known that I could rely on you, even in the midst of a world that may have appeared to be crumbling apart. The look on Lucky's face became slightly more gentle. As she spoke, she said, Liz, you were my rock. Whatever was going on in my life, whether it was with my parents, with Helena, or with anything else that was going on, you were the one thing that remained consistent across the board. Putting the wounds of youth back into view. A cloud of uncertainty descended upon their talk as soon as Helena was brought up in the conversation. Scars had been left behind as a result of Lucky's kidnapping and brainwashing, and neither they nor Lucky had fully recovered from them. Elizabeth began her testimony with a hesitant tone, saying, I am aware that for a considerable amount of time, I have blamed myself for the fact that I was unable to save you from Helena. It is possible that I would have been able to, if I had been more powerful or more educated. He spoke in a gruff but soft voice, and Lucky joined in. Liz, please stop, he commanded. Nothing of that was due to your actions. The things that Helena did to me were not within our sphere of influence. Indeed, you have accomplished everything that you were capable of doing, equal to the fact that no one else would have done it. Elizabeth noticed that her fingers were twitching as if they were experiencing nerves as she looked down at her hands. The sensation of being so helpless was one that I simply detested. You weren't powerless, Lucky replied as he stretched across the table to hold her hand. You were taking the initiative. It was because of you that I decided to return to this location. I endeavored to rediscover who I am, and the reason I was able to do so was because you were the one who did it. Throughout the entire process, Elizabeth was squeezing his hand tenderly, while tears were welling up in her eyes. It is all I ask that we do not waste a significant amount of time, she stated. The tone of Lucky's voice became more emotional by the time he nodded his head. So am I, she said. However, we were successful in our endeavors, Liz. To this day, we always do. The recollection of their initial love. Elizabeth, however, reclined back with a smile of adoration dancing on her lips as the nature of the evil deepened, and the tone of the conversation got more lighter. Do you recall the very first dance that we did at the nurse's ball the very first time? During the scratching on the back of his neck, Lucky yet out a groan. Why was it that I could have forgotten? I have undoubtedly trodden on your toes at least a dozen times. I apologize for the inconvenience. Elizabeth let out a hearty chuckle. You appeared to be really concerned about it. This, on the other hand, had a wonderful flavor. In addition, I was so content when the night came to an end that I didn't even notice that my feet were hurting the next morning. There was no trace of insincerity in Lucky's voice as he stated, "It was without a doubt the most beautiful girl in the entire building." They are still. Elizabeth glanced aside, attempting to conceal a smile as she experienced a flush that spread across her cheeks. Do you know that you have always had the ability to make me blush? I mean, give me a break. Upon hearing this, Lucky responded with a wink and said, "Some things never change." Context of the present and context of the past. They exchanged stories about how their lives were progressing throughout the course of the evening. Elizabeth shared her thoughts on her three sons, Aiden, Cameron, and Jake. Aiden is doing exceptionally well in painting, Cameron is doing well in college, and Jake is exploring his life. Lucky, who was paying close attention to what was being said, wore a distinctively proud expression on his face. He uttered the words with real admiration for Liz, saying, "You've done an incredible job. The fact that you are their parent is a blessing for your sons." Elizabeth's eyes were filled with a hint of melancholy, despite the fact that she was smiling. Along the road, I have received a great deal of assistance. Also, I am not blameless for the errors that I have made. Have we all done that? Lucky let out a shrug in response. Despite this, you are still present and continuing to battle. The significance of this lies in this. What goes on with you? Elizabeth would like to know the answer to that question. What does the future hold for Lucky Spencer? He looked down at the cup of coffee he was holding in his hands when Lucky did not respond to his question. To tell you the truth, I'm still working through that situation. In the process of going back to the town of Port Charles, a flood of recollections has been triggered as a result of this. There are both positive and negative aspects. My gut tells me that I ought to stop jogging. A hand was placed on his by Elizabeth as she extended her hand. Lucky, you are surrounded by a large number of people who care about you. In my own case as well. Whatever decision you choose, keep in mind that you are not the only one. The moment he looked up, he found himself staring directly into her eyes. Lucky raised his head. Please accept my sincere gratitude, Liz. You have no clue at all how big of an impact that has on me. A sole conclusion to the story. Lucky stood up and put on his jacket as the numbers on the clock began to count down to the end of the day. The statement, "I should probably get going," was made by him, indicating that he was reluctant to depart. Elizabeth also stood up, and she went with him to the entrance of the room. At any time, you are welcome to stop by the location. This was, all right. In point of fact, Lucky responded, it was, with a smirk gracing his lips occasionally. It brings back memories of my younger years. While they were standing there, none of them wanted to say goodbye to the other. Elizabeth suddenly reached out and gave him a bear embrace instead of saying goodbye. During the embrace, Lucky rocked her, his words remaining unsaid and his feelings remaining unspoken as they poured into the embrace. "It's your good fortune. Just remember to take care of yourself," she recommended. The response that he gave was, "You too, Liz," and it was a very beautiful voice. Elizabeth's heart was heavy, but she experienced a sense of hope as she watched him leave as he stepped out into the crisp night air of Port Charles. Despite the fact that they had led such dissimilar lives for such a considerable amount of time, she was reminded tonight that certain connections never truly go.